Well, hello there, everyone. I don't know if anybody has ever heard that, so far saying is so far as, for a surprise, are you sitting down? And, usually if anybody warns as to where, what does, that if people warn to where if somebody's going to be what you call giving somebody maybe a phone call or maybe mailing a letter or anything like that, and you're like warned to where at the time, it's like that they ask you as to where are you sitting down? And this could also maybe be related to maybe a job interview or maybe a doctor's appointment or anything like that. But for how people ask also as to where that they got what you call some exciting news or what you call an important update or anything like that. So sometimes that, for any news or updates that maybe people want to hear about, but then on your hand too, that you're like wanting to, well, I could be standing up and still hear it, but, or I could be what you call, if anybody like wanted to, or if somebody were to call you, and, maybe if you were, maybe if the guys or the gals were being, in front of the barbecue grill and like weren't to where, well, if you're cooking, you know that more likely that you're not going to be sitting down if you're going to be cooking but you'll or maybe doing the laundry or anything like that. But you see right here as I use these photos right here, it's like top about it's like for that a few things that could more likely happen. Wow, it's like if we were sitting down, you have right here an example right here of this right here will be me or just like any other type of young gentleman that they will be what you call just watching TV or maybe playing a video game or anything like that. And then they may get what you call a surprising letter in the mail that morning or maybe that afternoon or that night or like anything like that. It's like saying about, yep, surprise, it could be maybe what you call surprise, you have a new cousin or like you're an uncle now, or if it could be what you call that, somebody that had recently got married or that there was a special occasion that was going on also. So we like one tour that we like surprises, but then sometimes when they just come all of a sudden, it's just like, well, that, I don't know why I was not told in advance. So if anybody were warned tour, that why is it that some people that may suggest that for you to be sitting down before you actually get the news. And sometimes it's like warrant tour that, well, how do people respond to that? Such as to where we are afraid if you could be standing up that maybe you could what you call that you can maybe lose your balance, or if it's anything that's what you call is like from how our body reacts to. So if we're going to be getting hearing any kind of news and you're like warrant tour, well, you better make sure that that person's sitting down before they actually get the news. So that's just a thing, though, is to where it could be what you call surprising news, or it could be bad news, or some what you call proud news. But on your hand, that for any type of news or so, is to where that I can go ahead and include that right here. If anybody wants to, or go ahead and write right here for news, or if it's any kind of update, especially. So you have right here of like if it's going to be what you call for news update. And and I don't know if we want to call it maybe like breaking news or anything like that. But anyway, but talk about right here for like anything that is really related to like what you call for news, updates or anything like that. That anybody will want, or anything that you may hear about, like on the social media or something like that, as to where that you better make sure that you're sitting down before you actually hear the news. So I know that if anybody warns us to where that let's just say it's a situation where go bys to where if anybody like warned to where that anything about maybe promotions or anything like that, maybe for a job or anything that could be related to like what you call is like anything that maybe that nobody really expects to hear. And anybody that may warrant or that they may have heard that a couple of times before, but think about one moment to where that really kind of puts you on like what you call like a stunning situation, like which is like a what you call a shocking situation, as well as anything that's related to like what you call surprises. But something that kind of happens all of a sudden, or something that what you call just happens, is to where it happens within the amount of time, within the hours. But then if you were real busy with something, it just kind of comes up and you're like warrant or something that I guess there's a difference between for what we expect to hear and what we hear, all of a sudden. from we hear about in the plus, anything that was what you call expecting also. But you see right here is that I use these pictures right here as the shows to where if anybody were warned to where that whenever these pictures were taken, that was anything that related to like anything about anything surprising news that was heard during this time, and I'm like, well, really that during the time that I had gotten any type of surprising news, that there was no pictures, of course, taken. So if anybody warned to, or if you get a phone call, or if you were to be called as like get approved on a resume or anything like that, get approved for good credit or anything like that, and that you're like warned, or that really you don't really have very many pictures of what the look that you had on your face whenever you got that surprise. So if anybody were warned, or the type of look that we would have, if we were getting any type of surprise, so far as surprise, are you sitting down like an yeah, now I am, or oh, I think so. So if anybody weren't, or how do we handle it to where that whenever we get that call that surprise, and the first thing that they're going to ask is to where, well, what's going on? You sitting down like an well, now I am what? Like, well, and then they tell you the news, and it's like, oh okay. So you're like warrant, or anybody that may warrant, or the type of look that you may have on your face, that look that you have is toward it. Is your eyes are your eyes supposed to what you call you get bigger, or like do you have that type of is your mouth supposed to be what you call open wide, and then about you have your maybe you have your tongue dangling from your mouth or anything like that. But let's just say that if anybody were warned toward it, yeah, that why is it that people may ask as to where are you sitting down? And and I'm thinking of making sure as to where I guess they're trying to make sure that that person is calm and get just in case as to where if they were working on something maybe around the house that nothing what you call goes anything that may go wrong, especially to where that they may fall they may have a say on all of a sudden fall, or if it's anything about as to where that yeah that you get some surprising news. And maybe if you were standing up working on something, it's like you doing all right. But anyway, but that's just a thing though, as to where a number of ways of how we explain as to where are you sitting down. But I mean that's just a thing as to where I guess everybody wants to make sure as to where if you could be standing up, then it's possible that you could maybe lose your balance, or any incident that could happen. And so I guess that if you're going to be sitting down, that basically means is to where, especially on a job interview, that it's like making sure everybody's all comfortable and everybody's relaxed before that they actually get the news or some sort. But really that you could be sitting down even in the car, or maybe at the restaurant or somewhere, and you're like warned to where that really that especially if you're going to be at the dinner table, if anybody warns us to where how often do we answer the telephone or the emails? How often do we answer our emails whenever we're at the dinner table? And I know with anybody that how often that they're going to be at the restaurant with their cell phones or some sort. And I think about you get your cell phones on the email, and thinking about is to where you get on your email, you're using your mobile device, and you get some surprising news also. How often do those messages ask you if you're sitting down? Or do they say something like what you call like attention please read or something like that? But anyway, but talk about say for a surprise, for are you sitting down? And you may have heard that a number of times by the phone calls, but really that if we were getting anything about maybe email messages or text messages, about the news especially. So how often do we are we sitting down when we read those emails? So there may be some time. So if anybody say better safe for security other than sorry, huh? But other than if anybody were to say that that they were at the restaurant, or that they were what you call doing something that maybe painting a house, or if it could have been what you call maybe they could have been standing up, maybe cooking or maybe cleaning until that they got the news maybe by email, and something that what you call is like some surprising news also. So it's like warrant, or if anybody were warrant, or if anybody say that you get a text message, one of those would be like surprise, are you sitting down? And I don't know if it would say anything about if anybody warrants us to where go ahead and write right here for like attention, it would say something like, attention, please read. So if anybody warns us toward it, yeah, if you get a text message like that, right there is toward it, it would say, see, that's supposed to be, please, anyway, trying to type on my, yeah, let's see here, trying to type that correctly. But anyway, attention, attention, please read. So if this was right here, let's see here, please read. So anyway, but there you have it. Talk about, for attention, please read. So you would have something that would say something like that right there, to where it says, attention, please read. And that would be what you call, like on text messaging. So text messaging, or if it's anything about maybe emails, emails by mobile. And how often do the messages ask to where, are you sitting down? But just to make the long story short, this is the news. It's like somebody got promoted, or if it was anything about his tour, if anybody warns his tour, that, yeah, that, how often will we be getting at any kind of news like that, especially if it's anything about maybe related to the taxes, or if it's grants, or anything about maybe about the failure notice, or if it's going to be anything about anything other about the importance. But how do we react about that, especially? And how many of them say something like, are you sitting down? Just to make sure that you're comfortable enough to hear the news whenever it's the right time or some sort. So you're like Warren Tor, that, yeah, surprise, are you sitting down? And so if anybody warns us, Tor, these pictures right here were taken back way before I even had my own computer, back before I even knew what text messages were. And if anybody warns Tor, yeah, I have any amount of phones, of course. And if anybody say that pick up a phone and then they answer a phone call or something like that, and you're like Orange, or that, yeah, about your reactions especially. But like one of those reactions where it's like, well, oh, okay, well, hello, well, okay, I was not expecting this or anything like that. So if anybody were warned, or that number of things are going on, and the type of look that you may have on your face especially. But these pictures right here, of course, were not even taken, of course. They were, they may have been taken maybe what you call during like a special occasion or anything about maybe family gatherings. But really, that I don't have very many pictures of anything that takes a picture of what what I look like during that time, to where that, yeah, I got surprising news or anything like that. But anyway, anybody probably say that they like we think about his tour. Really, anything that you want to share about his tour? Surprise! Are you sitting down? Yeah, somebody got promoted, or that anything else news-wise. But talk about it like for surprise. Are you sitting down? So I know that whenever you hear about that is tour, that people tell you is tour that are you sitting down, and usually is tour that they want to make sure that you're going to be comfortable enough, because whenever you're sitting down, and some that may say is toward it, yeah, that you may try to train yourself into standing up, which I know sometimes that I don't make a big deal about sitting down. I kind of, just kind of say it's like I'll go ahead and stand up, because if you're not planning on staying in the same position for a very long time, and you may decide like, yeah, train yourself and just standing up. But really, that they likely say is to where if you're going to be sitting down. And then some that may say is to her, really, that, hey, that, whenever you're sitting down, how often does it mean is to her? Yeah, if you're going to be standing up, that you're working, huh? That you're still working. If you're standing up, then that basically means is to her, you're still working. But then whenever you're sitting down, no, you're not really working. You're actually on break, or that you're just resting for a while, or anything like that. So really, that if anybody warns us to her about how many jobs out there that pay somebody really to sit down and then maybe answer a few questions. There may be many, but then one of those whoopies to where that, yeah, that anything involves what's called sitting down. And so really, that if anybody warns us to where that how many people sit down and what you call is that they may answer a few questions, And like with anybody, I keep if anybody were asked, it's like really about what do you think about basic requirements are as to work really. If school was about all what we wanted and all we wanted to do, then maybe you would not be able to learn all new things, huh? Do we learn anything new whenever we're sitting down or if we're standing up? So that's just a thing. But anyway, but talk about say for like the surprise you are sitting down, and talk about your for emails or any source of communication as well. So far as surprise, but other than that, May 25, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.